Alright, so it's Monday. We're back at it. I am out on the balcony. It's about 12 degrees out, Celsius. It's about a 55 Fahrenheit. So it's been a few days. It's been over a week since I've started this recording session. Which, as I mentioned, I can maybe recap a bit of the skeleton here if I can. So what I have been articulating here, I've referred to as a media expression. Simply, I plan to make a series of recordings and then transcribe them into text, and then have a kind of introductory body of work to go from there and start filling out however it goes from there. For example, putting it in a document and collaboratively taking out spelling mistakes and maybe noting of topics and that kind of stuff, or whatever protocols that I choose to use to process this work into something kind of more well prepared, whereas this is kind of expected to be raw dictation. So I'm speaking just kind of as fast as I can, just continually keeping a thought stream going, trying to get a thought stream going and sustain it for an amount of time. I have about 20 minutes right now before I have to go and get my laundry out of the dryer. So that should be enough time to hopefully get a start on this. So as I was saying, so I'm just calling this a media expression. It's going to hit the different types of media, wherever it goes. It's a you could say a program running. This is my October 2019 writing project, or media expression project program, which I'm currently executing. So I'm just proceeding through that as we go along. Right now, I'm expecting that a lot of this text will make it into a book, but now I'm starting to think that I may be talking for too long to have such an introduction as is. I'll probably have probably be better served to condense a lot of this. But so again, I have an intentional program, a process going on right now, a process of improvement. This is a feedback within this project, within the media expression project itself, a feedback to self-improve it as it goes along, and I'm just kind of learning as I go. As I've mentioned before, I've kind of been counting up the hours. We're at about, I think, 9 or 10 hours right now of recorded audio. I still have not transcribed any of it. I haven't looked over it. I hardly remember the details of exactly what I've talked about at this point. But that's okay, because I intend to try and recap as much as I can and keep things relevant for exactly where I want to go very shortly. So just as a service to the reader or listener who is this far into the expression, just to be able to pick up on some of the foundations for the topic, or maybe this is a review. Just a side note, I know people complain about repetitiveness in books, because I've read a lot of reviews of books recently due to my library accumulation process, which I've been going through this year, to try and to connect a lot of different areas of human skill and behavior all into one kind of big pile, so that it becomes apparent that when you present a problem, the solution isn't a stated solution. Like you don't just make a quick statement about a problem and then like any kind of serious global problem, a wicked problem, which seems very multifaceted and problematic, and recursive as well. As when you start unfolding some of the pieces of the problem, it keeps going more and more. So I guess problems are like questions in that sense. Same thing with questions; they can go along. It's a hyperstition in that you're using a small representation, a small pattern, put together, a symbolic set arrangement of symbols into a pattern. Like, talk about the most generic stuff possible when you get into phenomenology. So I'm just going to try and relax and meditate a little bit here, and just try to allow a flow of words to come again. So speaking of hyperstition, so yes, I think I pretty much covered that. So a problem hyperstition and a question hyperstition. So what they do is there's kind of an element of prophecy or future seeing in hyperstition. There is a futurative element, and so one thing that's often missing is a model to go along with the hyperstition. This is kind of a key component of it, because you're describing something. You're giving enough details to describe whole systems in an interesting representational way, which gets unpacked and unfolded over time. So I think that's kind of a key component to hyperstition. So even a question or a problem. When you recursively, okay, here's the portal entrance into the hyperstition, into Portal Mountain. When you recursively ask, what is the problem of this problem? What is the problem of that problem? What is the problem of the problem? The meta of the situation, you can kind of ride this in a way that it unpacks and unfolds into the self-reference itself, because you're using the cognitive facilities of your mind to unpack certain things. Like, if you have a question, well, is this question valid? Even, where did this question come from? Like, you can ask so many questions about a question. So the very fact of that, this is along an axis of ingress, or an angle of ingress to Portal Mountain, to the temperaments, to the inner self-reference, towards that which Portal Mountain is a bootstrap, and is also a hyperstition for the thing in and of itself, which is not a thing in and of itself. So the key there is that you're given bootstrap materials, and then you're being assisted into the self-reference. So this is why any instructions should be taken as provisional. In other words, to be discarded once the process, or once the program is up and running, loaded, and the processes have aligned to the concrete context of the situations. Anyways, so this is so far just a pretty broad brush stroke in what I've been calling the bootstrap of the bootstrapper. So I guess that's kind of is a great introduction, questions and problems as entry to the self-reference when you ask what is the question of the problem of the problem. What we have here is what's called a bootstrap. It's a program that's there to get you up and running. But the program as you see it itself, when you're looking at it, when you don't understand yet, that's not what actually is being supposed to be pointed at. If we're talking about the meta-organization, we're talking about something that has components in context, or in other words, concrete components and not simply abstract or abstractions. And that's my way around getting having to say that it has some subjectivity to it, or it has to do with your experience. These could be trigger words, but that's another equally valid way of looking at it, I guess. It's just amazing to think that how far we've been pushed into the mind to not see our context of the body. But this is the heart of the matter when talking about embodiment. A very common kind of spiritual term there. It has been said in many, many, many ways, and it goes along with a bunch of other things. Yep. Connecting your heart and your mind, connecting your body and your mind. Just to give some basic analogies. So able to see yourself in the context of the strange loop. And along with that comes the necessity of talking a whole different language, including fractal navigation, holonic navigation, a different language to describe how you describe it in an isomorphic way, how you are relating to your context. So I'll try to carry on with the bootstrap of the bootstrapper. So as I mentioned on earlier, or much earlier, probably one of the first things, this is also, we are executing the strike point protocol right now. This entire media expression, this recording session, this 10 hours so far, this would be considered under I could consider it under the umbrella of a single strike point domain. And what the point is that you're starting with some entry points, some beginnings, some startings, or just a starting or beginning or entry point. And what you want to do is illuminate enough of the what I've been calling the strike point domain. So this is kind of like all the different relative areas of interest. So the relationship between this entry point, or the relationships between the entry points and the other, and their counterpoints, and the web of meaning between them. So again, we're talking kind of fractally in a sense so I'm just thinking if I've introduced enough in this particular recording session so far of 20 minutes to even get there, I guess. But suffice to say that I've gone over some of this stuff in earlier chapters. But the kind of main relationship we're seeing here is so we're navigating an abstract phase space. Typically, we can apply this pattern to anything else, to other things. So the abstract phase space quickly is in an abstract manner seen as a set of relationships which are constraints between types of objects. So types have meaning in relation to other types of things. This is sometimes referred to as the properties of the type, and it's basically the constraints. Like a car can't be a car without wheels. It can't be a car without an engine. And likewise, some engines, from the engine's perspective, like an engine has a purpose or meaning based on some type of circular movement, I guess you could say. So a spinning of an axle can drive many different machines. One of them could be a car, but that's kind of the relationship between the tires and the engine. So there you go. That's just a kind of concrete example of navigating the APS, and these are the abstract when you're talking types and constraints between them. That's constraint. I was just kind of wondering if I should go into this right now or if I've already kind of spoken to it, but I think it may also be a good idea just to capture some other ways of saying things. I may think of stuff that I didn't think of earlier. So I'm just going to go ahead and keep talking and just generally quickly describe actually, the question is, do I need to go into the concrete triad here? So, or even the concrete of this triad. Again, navigating these perception modes or whatever has been described with the previous talk about triad protocol. I'm not sure how much depth I went into that, but this can again be used as an example of its use, at least. So I know the constraint is in the model slot. I'm looking at the guild slot right now of the pragmatic triad, and that's protocol. So I guess where I want to go with this is holy shit, I just saw somebody drive. Okay, this is messed up. They just drove over a full-size curb at the bus stop. Wow, they thought they were driving into the parking lot, which is next, but I guess they're not going to. Yeah, they probably went to the store parking lot to check out the damage. So yeah, right in front of my apartment is a